Ladies and gentlemen, happy Saturday to each and every one of you. It's been a while since we've spoken about President Donald Trump. He's been busy fixing America and doing what Americans elected him to do, which I actually support. I think presidents should be focused on their own countries and not necessarily on the problems of the rest of the world. But every once in a while, Donald Trump does look outside of his own borders and does look to what is happening in the rest of the world. Nigeria is a very good example of that. And earlier this year, of course, also looking at the Afrikaner situation right here in South Africa. Now, the debate between the rest of the world, Donald Trump, and the left very much is still ongoing about the genocide happening in South Africa of the Afrikaner people. And Donald Trump, in great fashion, once again poured some oil on the fire on this debate. So Donald Trump literally just announced it is a total disgrace that the G20 will be held in South Africa. Afrikaners, people who are descended from Dutch settlers and also French and German immigrants, are being killed and slaughtered, and their land and farms are being illegally confiscated. No U.S. government official will attend as long as these human rights abuses continue. I look forward to hosting the 2026 G20 in Miami, Florida. Now, as you can imagine, right, the victim addicted black people and the guilt addicted white people in South Africa immediately came out and once again said, genocide? What genocide? What are you talking about? To which the correct response is, you don't know what genocide actually is because you're a leftist. Your education obviously was compromised. So genocide isn't a single event. Many people, the mistake that they make is they look at genocide and they think Rwanda. It has to be a single night of over 500,000 people being killed, purely because one race suddenly believed themselves to be superior than another, or at least different to some extent. But that's not what genocide is. Genocide is a process. It can take a very long time. It doesn't have to be an overnight experience. It doesn't have to be a single extermination. And you get many types of genocide. You get something like cultural genocide. You get something like political genocide. You get something like actual physical, visceral genocide. These genocides exist. And I would argue that when you look across the board at what is happening in South Africa, there are at least 3 types of genocides that are taking place in South Africa. The first is culturally. In almost every single facet, the government has worked out the language of Afrikaans as well as the culture of Afrikaners from the the public sphere. Nowadays, if you want to be taught in Afrikaans, you have to go to a private school to do so, or you have to find one of the few state schools that still kind of teach in that, but is under immense pressure to change their ways. Or if you want to go to a university, you have to find a private university like the ones that AfriForum and Solidariteit is currently building, because you will not find it in the public sphere. So from that perspective, the Afrikaner is being pushed out culturally. But you can also look economically, and you can say, since white people in South Africa have some of the hardest times to find jobs, and don't quote me that white people are just so much better off than black people. Yes, white people are better off than black people for one reason and one reason only. Whenever the government passes a new law to discriminate against white people don't start screaming and crying victim. They simply make a plan, start their own business, and continue working. Black people, on the other hand, have cried for 30 years about how 30 years ago some bad stuff happened to them, and they continue to cry now. This in spite of the fact that every single mistake and every single bit of suffering that they experience has been at the hands of a black elected government, the ANC. Yet they still cry victim. That's why you're poor. It has nothing to do with apartheid. And yet, there are more laws every single year being considered by the ANC to push white people out of the workforce. This is this is economic genocide. And then you look at farm attacks. You look specifically at the nature of the farm attack. You look at how these farm attacks are being perpetrated, and then you look at the response from government about these farm attacks. Government insists on pretending like they're not happening, or if they're happening, they're just another part of life in South Africa, even though we know that they are not. That is an actual genocide being systematically exercised upon the people. So Donald Trump is 100% correct on the 3 types of genocide that you can ultimately have in a country. Just because it's not happening overnight doesn't mean that it is not happening. But of course, those on the left are too stupid to follow any of these arguments, and so they simply will not. I actually commend Donald Trump for this move, but not even because white Afrikaners are being genocided or being discriminated against in South Africa. Because I do actually believe that the word discrimination is a better indicator of what is happening to the Afrikaner people, just because some people have this visceral sort of, response to genocide, and they expect to see scenes from Rwanda when you say genocide. Probably discrimination and severe discrimination is a better indicator. It's interesting that the rest of the world has not taken note of any of that happening, but nevertheless, I think there's a far bigger reason why South Africa should not be included in the G20, and that is because South Africa does not belong there. When you look at the actual countries on this list, of which South Africa is suddenly somehow a part, you will know that it is nothing more than a pity position. South Africa was placed in this group purely because of Nelson Mandela, purely because the rest of the world felt guilty before what they didn't do to Nelson Mandela, and that's why they gave South Africa this position. But when you actually look at the GDP of the countries in the G20, South Africa is lost, and it isn't even close, ladies and gentlemen. It isn't even close, right? You look at us, we're so far down, right? That we genuinely don't belong on this list. There's genuinely no reason for South Africa to be part of the G20. When you talk about Singapore, right? Singapore is, in terms of dollar denomination, a very small economy, but it is also a country with very, very few people. It is effectively a small little country with one city, and everyone just lives in this one city. But in terms of riches, their people are incredibly rich, and it is the business capital of the world. So Singapore, it kind of makes sense. South Africa is a massive country. South Africa should technically be on the level of places like Turkey, Indonesia, South Korea, Spain even. But we're not. South Africa is a failed little state. Why is it in the G20? What is its purpose there? Well, I'll tell you. The only reason South Africa is there is to push their propaganda, is to push their nonsense. And it just never ends. It never ends in this country. I support Donald Trump in this, absolutely. I like the fact that Donald Trump is dialing up the heat on the South African government. I like the fact that the magnifying glass is on the ANC. I hope that in due time, right-wing governments in Europe are elected and that they follow suit, that they cut South Africa off from the teat that it's been suckling on. I hope that eventually Russia and China turns against South Africa, because it will happen. Both Russia and China will realize that they are backing a losing horse. The ANC simply cannot fix this country because it has no original ideas. Its idea, take from white people and give to black people. That's literally their only plan. You guys saw the 55 million rand a day that they're going to be giving to black businesses. That's all they're doing. They're taking from the white and giving to the black. The problem with that, there's not enough white people to give to the black people. There's about 2.2 million working-aged white people in South Africa. 2.2 million. If you took every single one of those jobs and gave them to black people, you'd still have about 25 million unemployed black people. Congratulations. You have not solved the unemployment crisis in South Africa. Congratulations. Black people are still poor as crap. You've just added 2.2 million new white poor people that will probably leave the country anyways, because why would they stay? The problem is the ANC. And once every single country in the world can realize that, and realize that what they're doing is feeding an addict more of the drug that it is addicted to, hopefully things will start to even out. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, hit the like if you liked it. If you didn't, let me know in the comment section down below how you feel. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons, as well as the YouTube channel members. To become a patron, hit the link in the description down below, or join button right below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you, and because you guys asked for it, peace.